The President of Venezuela's National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, rejected the interference of the United States government in the internal affairs of the country. In Argentina, the National Chamber of Labor Appeals declared the unconstitutionality of the labor reform that the government of Javier Milei seeks to impose. France's National Assembly approved on Tuesday a bill meant to enshrine a woman's right to an abortion in the French constitution. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The government of Venezuela expressed its repudiation of the most recent attempts of blackmail and interference in its internal affairs by the government of the United States. In a communique issued, the Venezuelan Foreign Minister stated, "Venezuela absolutely and unequivocally rejects the neocolonialist interventionism that Washington is trying to impose against an independent country that fully exercises its national sovereignty, and that has the right to choose its own destiny without the constant pressure and aggression of a government complicit in the massacre and genocide in Gaza, with a bloody history of human rights violations in our America, and with a record of repression of its own indigenous, Afro-descendant, and migrant population." The document states the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela calls for the union and mobilization of all the Venezuelan people in defense of national sovereignty and international solidarity to repudiate this interference in support of the sectors of the oligarchy of the big names linked to past calls for the imposition of illegal sanctions that affected the national, regional, and global economy. The document concludes by stating the following: Venezuela will not yield to any blackmail. Its institutions will continue to comply with the laws and the national constitution according to the mandate received by the Venezuelan people. Likewise, it will take all necessary measures to continue the course of economic growth and social development that it has undertaken with its own effort in the midst of economic hostilities applied against its citizens. Venezuela's response comes following the United States government's resumption of sanctions against Caracas after the South American nation's top court upheld the disqualification of the opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. The U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control announced that it was resuming its sanctions against the Venezuelan gold sector and was prohibiting the operations of the General Mining Company. On the other hand, the United States government warned that the concessions given to Venezuelan oil will be revoked if the Bolivarian nation does not lift the political ban against Machado. The President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, rejected the interference of the United States government in the internal affairs of the country. During the extraordinary session of the Venezuelan parliament, Rodriguez denounced Washington's declarations and the operations of its unauthorized embassy operating from Colombia. The high official reiterated that no state can get involved in the internal affairs of other countries. Likewise, the President of the National Assembly ratified that the decision of the political administrative chamber of the Supreme Court of Justice must be respected by the Venezuelan extreme right wing, as well as the agreements signed in Barbados with a sector of the opposition.
Because the sovereign decision taken by the political administrative chamber of the Supreme Court of Justice to activate a mechanism designed within the framework of the Barbados Agreement, which was drafted by the opposition delegation of the Unitary Platform, elaborado en el marco del Acuerdo de Barbados, que fue redactado por la delegación opositora de la Plataforma Unitaria, and which expressly states that the decision of that political administrative chamber must be respected whatever it may be. Because if the only acceptable decision were the one the oligarchy and the extreme right wanted, porque si la única decisión aceptable era la que querían los apellidos y las oligarquías y la extrema derecha,
Then what do we need a court for? The courts exist since they were invented to settle an issue, either one or the other option. That decision, taken last Friday, will still remain the same on April the 17th, April the 18th, April the 19th, the day of our Declaration of Independence.
La misma, el 17 de abril, el 18 de abril, el 19 de abril,
and then every day of 2024 and 2025, and so on until the end of history. Because it is res judicata. The court has already ruled, and there is no threat of anybody changing that ruling. Save yourself the effort.
In Argentina, the National Chamber of Labor Appeals declared the unconstitutionality of the labor reform that the government of Javier Milei seeks to impose through the Decree of Necessity and Urgency, DNU. By means of a ruling, their workers indicated the constitutionality invalidity of the DNU since the executive does not have the power to issue legislative provisions. In turn, the officials recalled that the admission of the exercise of legislative powers by the executive is only made under exceptional conditions and as long as the norm does not regulate criminal, tax, or electoral matters. The judges also emphasized that the reform may affect citizens due to the business inequality and rights of food nature. The Argentinian government announced the implementation of a $28.7 million cut by 2024 in the Ministry of Human Capital Expenses, covering the areas of health, education, labor, and social development. The state will carry out a resources optimization plan divided in two stages. The first one includes a cost reduction of $9.4 million with the cancellations of 758 contracts. And the second phase will continue the cuts in consumption goods and services for $19.2 million in order to optimize hiring and diverse purchases. In Ecuador, staff and patients of dialysis clinics held a demonstration outside the Ministry of Finance to demand payment of debts for the care of the people with renal diseases. According to the protesters, they allege that the Ministry of Public Health has been in arrears since April 2023, as well as the Ecuadorian Social Security Institute since May of the same year. The personnel and patients highlighted the risk that the operation of the clinics located in the towns of Santo Domingo, El Carmen, and Quito could run. On the other hand, social organizations and political movements expressed their rejection to the increase of this tax, which would affect the economy of the middle and lower classes. The National Statistics Institute of Chile registered during the last quarter of the 2023 an unemployment rate of 8.6%. The entity indicated that in the metropolitan region of Chile alone, unemployment reached 9.4%. According to the Institute's data, the country's labor force is about 10,077,000 people, of which 9,223,000 are employed, and about 2,500,000 are in the informal market. According to the figures, women were more affected by informality at 29.2% as compared to men, who registered 26.2 points. This recalling that those who working for informality lack a labor contract, irregular working hours, and obtain low incomes. Violence continues to plague Haiti. According to a United Nations report released on Tuesday, homicide rates in the country more than doubled as gangs attempt to expand their territorial control across the Caribbean nation. According to the report of the Secretary General of the United Nations Security Council and the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, the number of reported homicides increased by 119.4% since 2022. According to the document, in 2023, there were 4,789 homicides victims, including 465 women, 93 boys, and 48 girls, compared to 2,183 victims reported in 2022. On the other hand, the United Nations data shows that in 2023 alone, 8,081 people were victims of gang violence in Haiti, including death, injuries, or kidnappings. In Haiti, the member of the MOLEGAF, the Movement for Equality and Liberation for All Haitians, Clifford Lazare, is an example of the will of resistance and the struggle carried out by the Haitian people against the foreign interest in the nation. Let's listen to his words.
We Haitians are fearless people who feel the support of our African ancestors, even though the U.S. imperialists dumped their worst food and garbage on us and put guns into Haiti, doing everything to eliminate us. We are still here. We are going to keep fighting, no matter what. We will win because we are the children of the Salins, Bookman and Capo Lameau. We do not fear death. Guinea and the ancestors are always with us. The exploiters have been trying to kill us off. For how long? We Haitians do not die. We are strong like the Palestinians. Jusqu'au bout, onward toward victory always. We won't give up. This is the spirit of Wakale.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. France's National Assembly approved on Tuesday a bill meant to enshrine a woman's right to an abortion in the French constitution. The bill was voted by the lower house of the parliament by 493 votes in favor and 30 against, and constitute the first key step in a legislative process that now requires a vote in the Senate. Abortion in France was decriminalized under the 1975 law, but there is nothing in the Constitution that would warrant it. The measure had been promised by the President Emmanuel Macron following a rollback of abortion rights in the United States. A constitutional amendment must pass both chambers of Parliament and then be approved either in a referendum or by a 3/5 majority of a joint session of Parliament. Macron's government is aiming for the second method, though the level of support in the Senate is less certain than in the National Assembly. Local media in Spain highlighted that the amnesty law was not approved on Tuesday in the Spanish Congress after the Together for Catalonia party voted against it after failing to reach an agreement with the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party on how to include terrorism crimes in the text. In total, the law promoted by the president of the Spanish government, Pedro Sánchez, received 171 votes in favor, 179 against, and 0 abstentions. In this way, the government announced the return of the law to the Justice Commission, and on the other hand, the Spanish Congress will continue negotiating the draft bill of amnesty to the Catalan independentists. In this sense, the party Together for Catalonia considers that the law, as it is written, does not cover all those accused in the sovereignty process. Russia has opened the first meeting of BRICS Sherpas and South Sherpas during its presidency of the alliance in 2024. Representatives of 5 new members, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, will also take part in the event, which is scheduled for January 30th to February 1st in Moscow. The summit takes place where Russian, Chinese, Brazilian, Indian, and South African diplomats attend as representatives of the bloc's founding members. The BRICS, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, together account for around 40% of the world's population and a quarter of global gross domestic product. During the inauguration of the first BRICS in 2024, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov reaffirms Moscow's commitment to preserving unity in diversity.
I would like to reaffirm the commitment of Russia to preserve the BRICS spirit, ensure continuity and coherence of our cooperation. We believe that the joint efforts of BRICS countries, and all of us, I believe, share this, in order to advance the BRICS program for this year, will also contribute greatly to the promotion of the interests of the world majority.
In Zimbabwe, opposition politician Job Sikala will be released after more than a year and a half in prison. This was reported on Tuesday by his lawyers after Harare court imposed a suspended sentence on him. Sikala, 51, an outspoken and popular critic of the government, was one of the most prominent figures arrested in recent years in what rights groups have described as a crackdown on dissent in the southern African country. Sikala was found guilty of inciting public violence last week at the end of a year-long trial that supporters say was politically motivated. Another opposition member of the parliament, Godfrey Sithole, was also found guilty of the same charges. Sithole and Sithole were convicted of inciting their supporters to avenge the death of their political ally, More Blessing Ali, who was killed by a ruling party activist in May 2022.
Job Sikala has been given a 2-year prison term, wholly suspended for a period of 5 years, on condition that he does not commit a crime involving incitement to commit public violence. He is now a free man. This is the only case that has been keeping him in custody, so he is going to come out. We're got instructions to take the matter up to the High Court on appeal. What we want is an acquittal, not a conviction with a lighter sentence. No, we disagree with that.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, at least 11 civilians were killed and others were injured in an Israeli shelling targeting a house in Deir al-Balah in the central Gaza Strip. Israeli warplanes also bombed a house in the Bureij refugee camp in central Gaza, resulting in the wounded of several people. The occupation's shelling also targeted a group of citizens east of the Al-Bureij refugee camp, causing injuries to at least 3 people. According to sources, the occupation launched airstrikes on the Nuseirat refugee camp, the northern parts of the town of Beit Lahaya, and the eastern parts of Khan Yunis in central, northern, and southern Gaza, respectively. The ongoing Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip since October 7th of last year has so far resulted in the killing of 26,751 people and the wounded of about 65,636 others. At least 8,000 citizens were reported missing. A spokesman for the World Health Organization said Tuesday that the food and water situation in Gaza is extremely bad, with regular food supplies being cut off for more than 100 days.
Well, the food and water situation is extremely bad. Food has been cut off. Regular food supply has been cut off Gaza since more than 100 days. The population is really at the border of famine, as was discussed multiple times already, and it's definitely not getting better. It's getting worse by the day. We had a convoy just this morning trying to reach Al-Nasser hospital with patients, healthcare staff, everybody there needing food, but the very needy population already before basically took the supplies, as we can call it. This was a self-distribution of supplies, which only shows how dire the needs are.
Italy has received in the last few hours the first 11 Palestinian children wounded during the Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip. More than 100 will be treated in hospitals in that country. The children who arrived in Rome on Monday night were received by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Antonio Tajani. The children will be treated in various pediatric hospitals in Rome, Genoa, Bologna, and Florence. Italy is the first European country to launch an international operation to rescue victims in Gaza. General Francesco Paolo Figliuolo told the media, announcing that on January 31st, the Vulcano Hospital ship which provided humanitarian aid and will transport another 50 wounded children, will return to the country. In China, the government classified the Middle East situation as highly complex and sensitive and urged restraint of parties involved after President Joe Biden said the U.S. should respond to the overnight drone strike that killed 3 U.S. troops and injured dozens in northeast Jordan. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said at a daily briefing when asked about the incident that countries concerned should avoid being caught in a vicious cycle of retaliation and prevent further escalation of tensions in the region. On Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden blamed militias for the first U.S. fatalities after months of strikes by such groups against U.S. forces across the Middle East. Since the war in Gaza began on October 7th, militias have struck U.S. military installations in Iraq more than 60 times and in Syria more than 90 times, with a mix of drones, rockets, mortars, and ballistic missiles.
The current situation in the Middle East is highly complex and sensitive, and we hope that all parties concerned will exercise calm and restraint, strengthen dialogue and communication, avoid being caught in vicious cycle of retaliation, and prevent further escalation of tensions in the region.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English,